Hi, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Amanda Thomas, and over here we talk about true crime and those kinds of things. So if you're wanting to join me on this adventure, go ahead and click the subscribe button down below and the little bell icon so you can be notified when I upload. If you're following me here from TikTok, which I think the majority of you are, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. It has been quite the adventure over there, and I decided to bring it over to YouTube so we could have longer than 3 minutes to talk about some of these cases. I know a lot of times 3 minutes is a very short amount of time to try to get all the information in, and so I figured we'd hop over to YouTube since TikTok still has not given me the 10-minute option, and we talk about some of these cases more in depth. So again, if that's something you're interested in, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and the little bell icon, and yeah, we can start this adventure together. If you're returning, thank you so much for coming back. I just truly appreciate your guys' support and your comments. It's been such an amazing adventure. Thank you so very much for all of your kindness and your support. I cannot do this without you guys. And yeah, it's just been great. So thank you so very much. I recognize your usernames or your names, and I love the interaction that we've had over the last couple of months, and it's just been amazing. So thank you so very much for being here. I do want to preface this by saying the things that we do talk about on this channel can be pretty heavy sometimes. So if that's something that your mental health cannot handle, just go ahead and click off this video and I'll catch you somewhere else. Your mental health is so much more important than a YouTube video, so I'd much rather you protect that than anything else. So we'll catch you somewhere else, but thank you anyway. So today's conversation is going to be a strange one. I kind of find myself bouncing back and forth between the two, but I think I've made up my mind on what I think about this case. But have you ever seen this movie? It's called Bernie, and it came out in 2011, and it stars Jack Black. Jack plays Bernie Tiede. I've heard it pronounced Tiede and Tiede, so I'm not quite sure, but we'll just refer to him as Bernie. But Jack Black plays Bernie, and it is a black comedy, so it's about the murder that we're going to talk about today, but it's also funny. I personally love the movie. I think it's a great movie. When I first watched it, though, I didn't realize that it was based on an actual case that happened in Carthage, Texas. Now, Carthage is an extremely small town, and it is in the eastern part of Texas. It's 20 miles west of the Louisiana border. In 2021, the U.S. Census said that there was roughly 6,500 people living there, so I mean, it is a really, really small town. It is also the home to the Texas Country Music Hall of Fame, so there's that, but it is an extremely small town. And for someone like me, I come from a very, very small town, much smaller than Carthage, but I understand how the rumor mill works and how the cliques work and how all of these kind of things work. So this case really kind of struck close to home. Like, I understood what they were talking about when they were talking about the rumors and all the hearsay that was going on behind the scenes with this case. And I also know how they can truly impact people's way of seeing others. And I really feel like this was a huge part in this case and what people's thoughts were behind the case when they were talking about Bernie and what happened. I really feel like these rumors and the rumor mills and these little cliques really influenced how this case has been seen in the media. So now Bernie Tiede, or Tiede, like I said, I've heard it pronounced both ways, so if you want to correct me down in the comments, please go ahead and do so. But he was born in Abilene, Texas on August 2nd of 1958. Now, his parents were immigrants. His dad, at least, was an immigrant. He came from the Ukraine when he was a child, and he was a professor of music and also a choir director at the Lady of the Lake College in San Antonio. His father met and married his mother in 1957, and Bernie was born a year later in 1958. Unfortunately, when Bernie was just 2 years old, his mother and father were in an accident, and his mother died due to the injuries that she sustained there. Bernie says that his father never quite got over this accident. He blamed himself for the passing of his wife, and he really started drinking after this pretty heavily. And Bernie's father would die when Bernie was just 15 years old. So Bernie knew death from a very early age, and this really seemed to affect him. But Bernie would continue to graduate high school and then go to college and get an associate's degree in mortuary science. And it was after college that he took a job in Louisiana. So he moved to Louisiana and he was working there until he saw an ad in the paper for an opening for assistant funeral director in Carthage at the Hawthorne Funeral Home. It did not take long for Bernie to become very popular in town. He was involved with everything. And when I say he was popular, he was so loved in this small town. He was, like I said, involved in everything. He would perform in plays. He was part of all these extra groups that were in the community. And he was also the assistant funeral director at the local funeral home. And he was so praised for his work at this funeral home. Everyone loved him. He would sing, he would preach, he would do anything he needed to do to make anyone's funeral a very special service. He would do anything to help anyone, transition into this new way of living in a very beautiful way, I guess you could say. He was very good at his job and he loved doing his job too. Everyone really wanted Bernie to oversee their funeral. He would go above and beyond, not just at the funeral services, but even after, always making sure that he would go to the widow or widower's house to make sure that they were doing okay after the services were over. He would just do everything he could to make sure that the people of Carthage felt loved after their loved one had passed away. People would honestly gush about how lovely of a person he was. I cannot tell you enough how much this person was loved in the community. And it seemed that Bernie was taking care of pretty much everyone's funerals in this town. And this is how he would meet Marjorie Nugent. Marjorie and her husband were extremely wealthy. They had oil money and they were extremely wealthy. Now, Marjorie's husband died very suddenly of heart failure, and Bernie was the one presiding over his funeral. Apparently, he embalmed him and he also sang a song at his funeral service. This is how he got to know Marjorie. They met at her husband's funeral service, and it didn't take them long to just hit it off. They started being seen around town together. They were spending a lot of time together, and many people started gossiping about them. They didn't know if they were together or if they were just really good friends, but either way, they were always together. And Marjorie spared no expense on Bernie. She bought everything for him. She would take him traveling to many wonderful places. They would go on luxury cruises, eat fancy dinners together, go see shows together. Marjorie and Bernie were together all the time. And like I said, people began suspecting that maybe there was a little bit something more going on there, but there were also rumors going around town that Bernie was gay, so people didn't quite know what was happening between the two. But again, the way people talk in small towns, it was also rumored that Margie was not a very kind woman. It was said that she could be pretty difficult. She lived pretty isolated from the townspeople. She lived on the outskirts of town and she wasn't seen much in town or around other people. But for some reason, she really latched onto Bernie. By 1993, Marjorie had convinced Bernie to quit his job at the funeral home and become her business manager and her personal assistant and her travel companion. And Bernie did that. He was at her beck and call completely. But in November of 1996, people stopped seeing Marjorie completely. And when asked about this, Bernie would just say that she was either out of town seeing friends or she was just not feeling so great and she was staying at home. And like I said, Bernie was so loved by the community and everyone knew that he was Marjorie's go-to person. They just really didn't question any of this. It wasn't until Marjorie's son Rod hadn't been able to get a hold of his mother for 9 months that he finally grew suspicious that something more was going on. And he got in touch with the local police department asking them to do a welfare check on her. When police entered her home, they couldn't find Marjorie anywhere, but when they went into her garage, they opened up her freezer and under pecans and frozen dinners and frozen meat, they found Marjorie's body. Bernie immediately became the prime suspect and he was taken into custody for questioning, and it did not take him long to admit that he had in fact killed Marjorie. And this is where things kind of take a turn for the strange. So Bernie did immediately confessed to murdering Marjorie. He said that he had just kind of grown tired of her abusive rants, and in a disassociative state, he had shot her. One particular day, Marjorie had been extremely abusive, verbally abusive to him, and they were going to lunch together. And when they walked into the garage, Bernie said he looked over and he saw a gun. It was then that he picked it up and shot Marjorie 4 times. But he also said that he felt like it wasn't him that had shot her. He felt like he had been in a disassociated state, and it felt like he wasn't the one who actually shot her. Bernie was arrested, he was tried, and he was convicted for this murder. But most people in town seemed to be on Bernie's side when it came to all of this. They all talked about how Marjorie was such a difficult person, and they were not surprised that her rants had finally driven Bernie over the edge. And when the movie came out in 2011, it really didn't help because it paints Marjorie in such a light that she was this evil, vindictive woman. But her family says otherwise. Her family says that Marjorie was a lovely woman and that she was very close to her family and that she was very kind. And the movie just gave her this bad image. And she said that the townspeople shouldn't be so quick to stand up for Bernie when they didn't know the full truth. In the movie, you can see Marjorie throwing fits when Bernie isn't exactly where she wants him to be when he wants him to be. You see her being verbally abusive to him. You see her demanding he wear a pager so he can be at her complete beck and call. While watching the movie, you almost feel bad for Bernie. You almost kind of get a sense of sympathy for him, thinking that he went through a lot to be there. He was such a kind man, and then to be abused by this woman, you almost feel for him. But the movie doesn't paint the whole picture. Even if Marjorie was a difficult woman, does that mean that she deserved to be murdered in cold blood the way she was? And a lot of the evidence was left out of the movie itself. Sometime during their friendship, Marjorie wrote everyone in her family out of her will and made Bernie her sole inheritor. This would have left Bernie her estate, which was worth about $7 million. Bernie also didn't make very much money working at the funeral home. It was about $24,000 a year. And when he met Marjorie, she would take him on these luxury vacations and buy him anything he wanted, and he was just able to kind of get a taste of luxury. So Marjorie's family believes that Bernie was a con man who was just after her money. The evidence doesn't quite add up either. Bernie says that he looked over and grabbed a gun that he saw randomly and then shot Marjorie with that. But what actually happened, Bernie moved that gun several days prior into the garage from a different location in the house. Also, when he shot her, he says that he shot her 4 times in a dissociative state. But when he shot her, the first time, he shot her from across the garage, and this initial shot paralyzed her. He then walked closer to her body and shot her 3 more times point blank. Bernie was also stealing a lot of money from Marjorie. He had stole millions. He had grown used to forging Marjorie's signature, and he was stealing just a lot of money from her. Marjorie was actually planning on having someone come and look at her books, and many people think that if someone was able to come look at her books and look at her financial situation, they would have found out that Bernie was in fact stealing a lot of money from her. So her family thinks that Bernie killed her to avoid having someone find out that he was stealing from Marjorie. Since Bernie was so popular in the county that he lived in, the trial had to be moved 45 minutes away to a different town where they could get a jury where people wouldn't know Bernie. The prosecutor was bound and determined to nail Bernie to the wall. He wanted to, the full sentence and everything, and he got just that. Bernie was tried and sentenced to life in prison, and this really seemed to outrage the people of Carthage. They were supporting him fully, saying that Marjorie had been abusive to him, that she had isolated him, and finally Bernie had just been pushed over the edge. And after the movie came out, there were several different articles that came out kind of defending Bernie for this too. It was really Marjorie's family that was trying to get the word out there that Bernie had in fact murdered Marjorie in cold blood and that he shouldn't be getting the support that he was receiving. But after the movie did come out, there was a lawyer that took on Bernie's case and decided to try to get him a new trial, and they did just that. They were granted a new trial, saying that there was other evidence that had come out that would help prove Bernie's innocence. In fact, the original prosecutor said that if he had known some of the things that Bernie had gone through, that he wouldn't have tried to get as quite a harsh punishment as he had initially sought after. Bernie also says that his uncle had been abusive towards him. He had essayed him when he was 12 years old. Even though his uncle denies this and says that this never happened, he still clings to the fact that his uncle did abuse him and that this part of the reason why he had murdered Marjorie after she had been so abusive to him. But the lawyer says that between the abuse that Bernie went through as a child and the abuse that he endured with Marjorie, that he should be granted a new trial, and a judge agreed, and he was granted that trial. They were also able to bail him out of jail while before the new trial, so Bernie was able to enjoy some freedom during this time. The funny thing is that Marjorie's family did not know that Bernie was granted a new trial. They found out about this through the news outlets and stuff like that, and this really upset them because they genuinely believed that Bernie was a con man who was just after Marjorie's money and killed her to get that. They went back to trial in 2017, and Bernie's new lawyer presented the evidence that Marjorie had been abusive to him and the abuse that he went through as a child, and Marjorie's family still clung to the evidence that said that Bernie had done this for the money, and a jury agreed with Marjorie's family, and Bernie was once again sentenced to 99 years in prison in August of 2017. Now, Bernie is up for parole in 2029, and so I guess we'll see what happens with that. But I would love to know your thoughts on what happened here. I get that Bernie was a very loved person in his community, and I'm sure he did many great things, and he did. A lot of the money that he stole from Marjorie was given to people in need. He would give to anybody who needed anything, and that's just who Bernie was. He enjoyed helping other people out, and he wanted to see other people succeed. And I don't think that that's a bad thing, but I still can't wrap my head around the fact that Bernie murdered this woman and then went to live on his life like normal. And he really did live his life like normal. After he had murdered Marjorie, he still went to community plays. He was still part of the community in every way, and he just kind of covered up how Marjorie wasn't there. Nobody suspected a thing. Nobody thought anything different. And I have a hard time understanding how anyone could murder somebody and then continue to live a completely normal life. If you ask me, I think that Bernie never had the intention to murder Marjorie when he first met her. I think that they became good friends, and when Marjorie was giving him all these gifts and taking him on all these extravagant trips and all of those things, Bernie got a taste of the luxury life, and I think he liked it a little bit more than he thought he would. I think that maybe Marjorie could have been a difficult woman. Maybe she was a little bit demanding, but I think that Bernie wanted to get away from her, but he still wanted the money. I'm not sure if he tricked Marjorie into putting him in his will and being the sole inheritor, or if Marjorie did that on her own, but I do think that Bernie got a little taste of luxury, and I do not think that he went in a dissociative state and killed Marjorie. I do believe that it was premeditated, and I think you can see that with him shooting her at point blank range 3 more times. I also think you can see that by him moving the gun well before the crime took place, and I do think that Bernie is where he needs to be. I do think that when you murder somebody, there should be some consequences, and I have a hard time believing that this was not premeditated, but I would love to know your thoughts on this. Let me know down in the comments below if you've seen the movie. Let me know what you think about it. Personally, I love the movie. It's a little bit funny. Jack Black does a wonderful job of playing Bernie. Jack Black does not get the recognition he deserves, but that's just my personal opinion. But Matthew McConaughey is also in the movie. He's the prosecutor. It's a very good movie. It's a little bit funny, dark humor. You know, if that's something that you like, you would like it a lot. I watched it before I started filming this video, and it's funny. It's a good movie. I wish it wasn't based on a true story, but unfortunately it is. So I would love to know your thoughts down below. Please comment, or if you just want to say hi, that's fine too. But I'm going to send you so much peace and love, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, night, morning, whenever time it is you're watching this. But thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I really appreciate you guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye.